My name is Thea Woodruff, and I am the Wellbeing and Learning Environments Coordinator at the University of Texas at Austin. I work out of the Longhorn Wellness Center, which is a joint group with the Counseling and Mental Health Center and University Health Center, University Health Services at UT Austin. And I'm going to be talking with you today about this initiative that we have at UT that's been going on now for 4 years called Texas Wellbeing, or Wellbeing and Learning Environments. That was the name of the grant when we first started. And now we have got other funding, so we're funded a little bit more long-term at UT. And I'm just going to walk you through this initiative and kind of why we started it. So we're going to look at some data around college mental health, talk about the implementation of this initiative, where we started and where we are now. I'm going to share a little bit of data from our initiative, both qualitative data and quantitative data, give you some resources that we have created that maybe can be helpful to you so you can look at and think about if there are things that you might be able to pull from and use in your own context. And then just share a few things about working with faculty and some just kind of tips and ideas to think about if you're wanting to do something like this with working with faculty in your own context, wherever it is that you're working. So let's start with data. So probably a lot of us already know a lot of the data around college mental health, but we do know that there's a strong relationship between mental health and college success. And additionally, mental health in the classroom. So we actually know that we do have some research around the support that we need to be providing both at the college level and in classrooms around mental health. And by the way, all of the pictures that are in this presentation are faculty who initially started on our project 4 years ago piloting the project. So this is Ramesh Irabali. He's actually a yogi, and he's doing yoga with some of his engineering students because he's a professor in engineering. All right, so some other information that we know, some research we know about learning is we know that emotion is important to learning. And I just provided a couple of quotes here around emotion and how central emotion is to the learning process. Some of these things that we think about that maybe are more cognitive processes like attention and memory are very much tied also to emotion. So when we try to pretend like we can teach without considering students' emotions or motivation, we're putting ourselves in a very bad place. So we need to really be thinking about and considering the central role that emotion plays in our classrooms. And I have a pre-K through 12 background, but this needs to be happening in higher education too. We can't pretend that students just come to the classroom and drop all their emotions at the door and then come inside to learn and do all the cognitive stuff. And there's no connection to emotion. So really need to be tying what we're doing in our classrooms and think to the emotional aspects too, and that connection. And really appreciating this. And I like this quote here because it talks about appreciating this and not trying to ignore it. And really, again, thinking about the central role really that emotion plays in learning. And I like in this quote here that says, when we fail to appreciate the very reason the students learn at all, which is really this emotional aspect and the impact that learning has on them emotionally as human beings. Some other data. So I'm trying to show you lots of different data for why this kind of initiative might be important. And the reason is because when you're working with faculty, they like data. So it's very good to show different kinds of data because different kinds of data connect with different folks. And when I show a lot of these different slides, some of this data on different slides connect with different faculty, and they'll ask me questions, they'll send me emails, they'll want to know where this data came from. And it really does have an impact on folks like engineers, and some of these folks who are scientists and mathematicians, and some of these folks that focus on these kinds of things, they really like to look at the data to give them a reason for why they should be doing things. This is data from our Counseling and Mental Health Center from over the last, from about a 10-year period, and the number of students accessing the Counseling and Mental Health Center. And we can see this increase, this 88% increase over time, which is good. This means the stigma around mental health hopefully is going away and that more students are willing to reach out to the Counseling and Mental Health Center to get the resources that they need. Of course, the difficulty with this is, you can imagine, is that our numbers of clinicians and counselors have not gone up. So this was some of the data that initially prompted our associate directors to kind of think about what's going on culturally with at our campus that may be feeding into these numbers continuing to rise at these rates. And again, not a bad thing. We want students accessing the Counseling Mental Health Center, but are there things we could do actually as a community or culturally that maybe could shift some things to help support these students too? So not just at the Counseling Mental Health Center, but everybody as a community supporting. Then also this other piece of data here in the second bullet about this Gallup poll that came out. This actually came out after we had started our project, but I thought it was really interesting. This Gallup poll looks at alumni And here the UT alumni were asked about having a professor who cared about them or a mentor who encouraged them to pursue their goals and dreams. UT looked better than the national comparison group, but look at these percentages. Really, 17%, 19%? We can't get up to at least 20% of alumni who say they have a faculty member who cared about them or mentored them to encourage them to pursue their goals and dreams. I just think we can do better than that. I think we can get those numbers raised up, at least over the 20% mark, I would hope. This is another Gallup poll that came out a few years prior to that, and it was showing the relationship between having a professor who cared about you, made you excited about learning, and encouraging you to pursue your goals and dreams, and how that was correlated with being twice as likely to be engaged at work and thriving in life. So the more this is a correlation, it's not causation, but the relationship between these experiences in college and how those then play out later on in life and in work. So I thought this was another interesting piece of data that maybe could encourage us to think about how to demonstrate to students that we care about them and that we're interested in more than just them, the cognitive aspect of them being in the classroom. Then one other piece of data, this actually came from some focus groups that were done at UT Austin back several years ago, and they were doing focus groups with students and asking them about the culture at UT and kind of how supportive UT was of their mental health. And what came out of those in those focus groups was that students talked a lot. They said that, you know, my peers are really supportive. I feel like I have a good network of peers who can support me. Staff, for the most part, academic advisors, folks like that. I feel like those folks are really supportive, but I really feel a disconnect with faculty. I feel like they just don't understand where I'm coming from as a student. And so that was one piece of data that kind of pushed our director to apply for funds, to apply for a grant to fund something where, well, can we make, his question basically was, can we create an initiative, put a project together that can sort of help to bridge this gap, this gulf between students and faculty. So this was another piece of data that kind of pushed them to think about, you know, this initiative and putting something in place. This data just came out pretty recently. This was published a couple of years ago. This is the data that gets a lot of faculty thinking about their classrooms. This is data from these folks. They published this in a journal. And what you're looking at here is the percent of students reporting these different mental health issues, either in 2007 or 2013. Some of this data came from about 10 years prior, some came from about 5 years prior, and then to 2018. What did those percentages look like 5 to 10 years later? And you can see big jumps in these percentages, in some cases more than doubling, right? In some of these, like suicide attempts and severe depression, these self-reports. But even some of these that didn't double, I mean, jumping up a huge amount. And so thinking about what does that mean? Because we know this can't be biological because we as human beings don't change this quickly. So what does this data tell us about culturally, community, what needs to be happening? And then what happens is this gets faculty really thinking about their classrooms and these percentages in their own classrooms and what they need to be doing in their classrooms to support students. If there's this high percentage who are reporting these mental health issues, what are the things in their classroom that they can do and in their courses maybe they can set up to sort of help at least alleviate some of these things that may be compounding some of the problems, the difficulties that students are reporting. And of course, we also know COVID, the pandemic, has just exacerbated all of these issues. This is from last year, the Healthy Minds Network. We know this. Some of these numbers have even gone higher in the spring, where these percentages are increasing even more. But just another thing that's kind of compounded all of these issues, these mental health difficulties that folks have been having. So, and then of course we know that, you know, providing these secondary and tertiary interventions like counseling and a mental health clinic, although always going to be necessary, that's the most expensive way to provide for this support of mental health. So thinking about, are there things prevention-wise on the prevention side that we can do that maybe can make big differences for students in their stress levels, anxiety levels, this kind of thing. So really trying to work upstream and think, what can we do culturally, community, prevention-wise to do these things. All right, so that was a lot of data in a little bitty time amount of Athea Woodruff talking super fast, but you can pause the video here if you want to and think about, maybe go back and look at some of those slides and think about what do all these data, all of these different kinds of data, what do they say about college student mental health? And then what do they say about faculty supporting student mental health? What do they kind of tell you about maybe what needs to be happening on college campuses when it comes to faculty and how they can think about these data? So you can pause now and do that. I'm going to go on and talk about our project now and kind of what we're trying to do. So the purpose of our project is just to try to help faculty think about small things that they can do in their classrooms or in their coursework or office hours or whatever the learning environment is to support student well-being, to support their mental health, and to really look at, are there small things that maybe can make big differences to students? And again, focusing on this prevention work. So what we did is we started our implementation. We piloted for 2 years in 3 different colleges: pharmacy, electrical and computer engineering, liberal arts. Started with those faculty, basically just trying to see what are faculty already doing in their classrooms to support mental health. We met with administrators, so deans, associate deans, talking about the project. We recruited faculty to be on the project. We did focus groups with faculty and with students around mental health and what was already happening. And just identify, we had kind of these 20 faculty who agreed to start our project. This was back in the spring of 2018. And we also created a survey. So we give a student survey every semester in the participating classes just to see what does student mental health look like, and also to get some qualitative data around what they say about how faculty can demonstrate that they care and help them help build connection in the classroom. So we've continued that from those 2 years. We've built up, so we've got more faculty now on our project. We just kept recruiting faculty, meeting with associate deans, seeing who was interested in participating on the project, doing lots of classroom observations. I just did one this morning remotely, where I basically just go in and watch faculty and document the things that they're doing, give them feedback about what they're doing that already supports mental health, and then give them 1 or 2 ideas about other things that they could do. Using the survey data and using that now, we've been doing some analysis of that. I'll show you that in a little bit. We created a guidebook and a website that has some of the ideas that have come from faculty and a research base that we know can work in classrooms, recruiting more faculty, meeting, and just doing a lot of meeting observations, and then kind of just constantly kind of putting ourselves on the radar for faculty and for administrators to be thinking about student mental health. This is kind of how we organize the different strategies that we talk about for faculty to embed in their classrooms. And if you go to our website, which I'll share with you in a second, or our guidebook, you'll see that it's kind of organized in these 3 sections, thinking about the whole student. So thinking about students as human beings, not just learning machines, embedding these conditions for well-being, like practicing gratitude, growth mindset, self-compassion, these kinds of things that we know can support mental health. And then also just good teaching practices, because some of that is just what, if we would just teach better and teach more based on what the science of learning says we should be doing, that can improve student mental health. So things that would fall in that category would be things like using cooperative learning, because we know active learning strategies are more effective for learning than just talking at students for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So now we've expanded into other departments and colleges. Natural sciences, we've got folks we're in that college. We're working with business right now. I've just recruited 19 faculty in business to kind of help me to look at this in their schools. So just keep expanding out, some by word of mouth. So some faculty come to me and ask me to be on the project. Some I reach out to because I've been told, oh, this is a professor who would be really good on this project. Some through, like I said, through associate deans or assistant deans will recruit folks or reach out to them. Documenting, continuing to collect all of these wellness practices that people are doing. We've got our student data. We've actually started giving a faculty survey now, which I'll show you. And then we also built a Canvas course because everything went online last year. So we built our own Canvas course for our initiative that we can then share out resources and materials and information for faculty to access around mental health. So here are the resources I just have mentioned, our guidebook. So you can download that off of our website for free. We have our website. And we have our Canvas course. We have both faculty modules that have just resources and information for faculty access. Then we also have some modules that we call the in Commons, because Canvas has a place called the Commons where you can put things in the Commons, and then other people can export or import things from the Commons into their own Canvas courses. And so I've built wellness modules. Like I have a wellness module around growth mindset. I have one about making failure okay. I have one about practicing gratitude, that faculty can go to the Commons and they can just upload it straight from out of the Commons and import it into their own course. And then they have that online module for students to go through if they want to embed that in their own course. And they can take them and tweak them how they want, but it just gives faculty an idea of how you can embed wellness lessons and activities within your course, even if it's online, and doing things through that learning management system, that LMS. So right now, this is kind of where we are. We have over 100 collaborating faculty and administrators on our project. We're across 13 colleges. So I listed off a lot of those. We're also in the education, College of Education, communications, all of these places. Several of these groups have now created their own faculty committees, as faculty and staff committees around mental health and wellness. So engineering has their own mental health and wellness well-being committee. So does liberal arts, so does pharmacy. Business is in the process of putting one together. Nursing has one. So we've started trying to get folks basically doing this, like taking charge of this themselves and not just doing it because Thea Woodruff says to do it, but trying to get faculty and staff who are really on board with this to kind of lead the effort in their own colleges and schools. So right now we have about 300 participants in our Canvas course who are in there, and that's both faculty, staff, and then we also, of course, have some students who are interested who get into our Canvas course. It's open to anybody basically at UT can get into it and enroll. We've collaborated with lots of other folks on campus. So our Faculty Innovation Center is our teaching center. They're actually a really close collaborator with us. We do a lot of presentations together, a lot of sharing of resources together, creating resources, collaborating on creating resources. I've worked with Faculty Council, Provost Teaching Fellows. So these are all folks, faculty and staff at UT who are interested also in embedding student wellness across the board, across all these places. Sanger Learning Center is great. That's where a lot of our students go to get tutoring and supplemental instruction. So I actually just did a session for their supplemental instructors last week. We've given out lots of material, so lots of guidebooks, sleep kits we give out, gratitude journals. Faculty really love giving out these materials because it's a concrete way to show that you really care about students and that you're interested in them taking care of themselves. And this is our website here, so you can go to our website and check it out. Again, stop and reflect because that was a lot of information to get in a teeny bit amount of time. But go to our website, check it out, see if there's information there or resources that might be helpful to you. You can also find my email there. You're welcome to email me. I'm happy to send you anything I can from our project that might be something you could use in your own context. So pause here and reflect for a sec. And here's my last little bit, just a little bit of data from our project. So this is just from our faculty survey. So this shows the faculty on our project. You can see that our faculty are very bought into the idea of growth mindset and going against a fixed mindset. So we have a lot of faculty who do try to work from a growth mindset perspective. And if you don't know that, check it out. Carol Dweck's work, growth mindset, but it's something that we talk about to help with student motivation and to really help students to stay motivated and look at failure as something that they can build on and learn from, and not be something that stops them, that keeps them from being successful. It's actually a way to continue to improve. So this is just a little bit of faculty data, some more faculty data. We asked them, what are some of the strategies that you're using in your class? And so these are some of the things that are still used pretty often. So any of the blue are going to be things that the faculty said that they used to some extent. So mindfulness, gratitude, mindset, growth mindset. So these are some things. And then these are things that they actually use even more. So they implement in the classroom. So really teaching students about resilience. So a lot of faculty on our project will talk about failure and their own failures and how they've overcome that failure and how they learned from that failure, self-compassion and empathy, and really trying to take things from the student's perspective and see things from the student's perspective. And then, of course, really trying to build inclusive environments where all students feel safe and feel like they belong and have access to the learning that they deserve. This is just a little bit of qualitative data that the graduate student who worked with me, she went through and analyzed some of our data from the pharmacy classrooms around caring and connectedness. And this was a model that we've built around students having a sense of connectedness and caring. And these are kind of these four themes that came up. So the students basically said, this is data we use a grounded theory method for analyzing the data. So from that data, these four themes arose: instruct in a clear, consistent, and creative manner, be genuine, so be an authentically nice, genuine person, establish a welcoming environment. And then one of the big ones for caring was investing in students. So really think about the individual student, making individual student connections and making the classroom accessible for all individual students and thinking about every student in the classroom. And I just wanted to give you an example of that. This was actually created by an engineering faculty member who's really focused on getting students to really practice self-care. So she created this graphic and she shows it in her classroom every week, talks to the students about the importance of self-care, gets them to write reflections, to practice self-care and then write reflections around self-care. And she actually embeds that as part of their grade in the classroom. Is when they write these reflections, they get participation credit. So I just wanted to show you one example of something a faculty member can do. Pretty simple thing, but just reminding students to take care of themselves. And then she also models and talks about her own self-care. And she talks about when she's struggling with taking care of herself and the things that she's doing to make sure that she's okay. All right, real quickly, just some things to think about when working with faculty. Start with this first bullet is really important. Start with the people who are already doing this. I say go with the goers. So find the folks who are really interested in doing this and let them lead, because they have really good ideas about how to do things, and you can take their ideas and show those to other faculty, and then they can kind of figure out how to take those ideas and turn them into their own. Realize that faculty don't have a lot of time and energy to devote to this thing, so try to make it as easy as possible for them to participate. You're going to have to be adaptable and flexible. Faculty are not always going to want to do the things the way you want to do them or do exactly how you want to do it. So you have to be open to them trying it in their own way, any of these things. And it's okay if they start small. It's okay to have varying levels of implementation. We have folks who are full on gung ho, like Nina, the person who created that self-care graphic on the last slide. And then we've got people who I don't know who are doing it, but who've taken our guidebook and who are trying it on their own. This is okay with me. As long as people are out there and trying these things and doing it in their classrooms, that's what matters to me. So meet faculty where they are and try, and baby steps. Doing one little thing or two little things can make a big difference for students. Quite honestly, the things that students say in our survey that make a big difference for them are not major things. They're things like knowing their names and using their names, being happy about teaching, being passionate about the subject that you're teaching, doing, small things like turn and talk, where students, you stop talking for 10 minutes and you let students turn and talk to each other about what they're learning. These are small things that we can embed through in any classroom. You just got to take the time and really kind of think about it just a little bit when we're doing this stuff, being a little bit more intentional about our teaching. And then one other thing that's really good that's come out in our project is faculty really like to collaborate with each other. So I've had faculty do presentations together. I've had faculty come in and present to each other across colleges. So letting faculty actually collaborate with each other on in this initiative is really helpful, because faculty don't get a lot of that. A lot of times faculty will tell me they feel isolated and alone, just like a lot of students feel. And so the more that we can actually help them to connect and build that social connection across, not only across their college, but across, between colleges is really helpful too. So, all right. And then the last thing I just want to say, you also have to remind faculty to take care of themselves, because this is difficult. It's difficult to take care of students and to help students to know to take care of themselves if we're not taking care of ourselves also. Trauma impacts everybody, including faculty, and you've got to care for yourself while you're caring for others. If you're not doing that, then you're going to empty your cup, and you can't do that. So, and these are just a couple of websites that can talk about some of the research around trauma and around compassion fatigue, which is a real thing. So I always have to encourage faculty, they've got to take care of themselves first before they can put some of these things in place that we're asking for students. All right, the rest of this is my references. So that is it. You can look at those. I'll put them up. That way you can pause it if you want to see the references. And that's it. I'm done.